right, welcome everybody to Dave Cooper Live, where we bring the industry leaders together with the people, the products, and the processes to help them all build it better. And today is no different. Today, we'll explore the fundamental strategies and indispensable requirements for taking modular projects from start to finish, a realm where innovation meets tradition and offsite construction intersects with timeless architectural principles and modern design. Our mission? Well, is to empower you with the actionable insights, digital resources, and case-based wisdom that you will learn how to conceptualize, permit, and construct modular structures. And drawing upon all of this wisdom is industry expert Dean Dalvit, the founding principal at EVStudios. But before we get into all of that, we have to thank our sponsors. So let's take a few minutes and thank them for allowing us to bring all of you these innovative conversations. Stream Modular, the only logistics company you need to transport your mods, pods, and panels. Our friends at Stream Modular are investing $50 million over the next 25 years to build the technology, solutions, and trailers needed to handle and transport the projects of today and meet the demands of tomorrow. Reach out to their team at streammodular.com to discuss your next project. Comil Lift is the largest global manufacturer of multi-directional forklifts and straddle carriers, a leader in long load handling solutions, offering a free warehouse and site optimization design service. Comil Lift helps companies of all sizes and from every industry maximize the capacity, safety, and efficiency of their warehouse and storage facilities. A big thank you to Paul Short and the team at Comil Lift for helping us all to build it better. Visit them at combilift.com. Brave Control Solutions, where offsite manufacturing systems that do more than just improve productivity. They have a unique approach to industrialized construction, a lineup of flexible automation systems specifically designed for the construction industry, empowered by CAD to Fab, and turnkey solutions for 3D volumetric assembly, structural insulated panels, finished wall assemblies, MEP component processing, assembly, kitting, and storage. Learn more at thinkbrave.com. All right. Again, thank you to all of our sponsors. Make sure you give them a big shout out. Go check out what they do. They are here to support you in our industry. All right. Without further ado, we're going to hop into it. Let's bring Dean onto the show. Dean, how are you today, my friend?
Doing great, Dave. How are you doing?
Doing great, man. We've been running in the same circles, right? We're in Las Vegas, in Orlando, right? All the fun stuff we're doing. I think it's a lot of fun to see you running the circuit. And I also think it's a lot of fun to see an architectural and engineering firm like yours embrace offsite and modular construction the way you have. But before we get into that, Dean, we want to know everything about you from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Do not leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital, or we will have your mother on the show. And you've already told me it could get quite embarrassing for you, so you better not leave anything out. You got about a minute and a half to do it.
Sure. Well, I'll do my best there, Dave. So I was born here in Denver, Colorado, and grew up the son of an artist who was also a jeweler. That's my mother. And my father was a mechanical engineer and also worked in construction for decades. He was the son of also a contractor. So I kind of grew up with both influences of design and tactical construction and engineering influences from both of my parents. When I went to college, I basically followed the path that my father took, and my first degree was in mechanical engineering. I got a second engineering degree and then went out into the world and started working as an engineer for a while, and realized after about 3 years that, boy, my true passion is actually architecture. And that's what I really wanted to do, which was a difficult thing because at that point I had a child on the way, was married, and a mortgage payment and all those good things. And not such an easy pivot to make at that point in one's life. So went the long way around, and it took 7 years of internships and continuing education to ultimately get to a point where I could sit for my architectural licensure. I went ahead and did that. Got licensed in 2005 and started. My original firm was Eagleview Architecture. That's where the E and the V come from, with EVStudio. And a year later, partnered with a colleague of mine, and we shortened the name, called it EVStudio. And we initially were an architecture firm that was also providing engineering that was all kind of flowing through me. That was very quickly proved itself to be pretty unsustainable to wear all of those hats in the early days, working 80-hour weeks and never taking vacations and things like that. So very quickly started to bring on support and staff to build out a structural engineering studio, a mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineering studio, a civil engineering studio, all to support our architecture studio. And so where we're at today, again, I'm dual licensed as an architect and an engineer, and have built out a multidisciplinary design firm that can provide all of those services.
When you say studio, you're talking about you have segmented your business to be highly focused and very efficient in each of those areas, right? From architecture, engineering, and it sounds like MEPs as well, right? I think so. When we're referring to it, because we're going to talk about studios moving forward here, even in the offsite space, but just to clarify, that's what the studio means.
Absolutely. So we've actually taken the evolution of our company a step further. So once upon a time in the earlier days, we were all professionals sitting in a big room, and when a project would come in, we'd figure out who was available and we would do the project, and that's how we got along. And that worked okay up to a certain size. Then it very quickly became apparent that we had people that were becoming specialists, and it didn't make a lot of sense for a specialist in multifamily to be working on a daycare, if that makes sense. Right. So the evolution of that thought process became design studios that have architects, structural engineers, other engineers, all within that vertical studio that focuses exclusively on that project type. So we have a commercial studio. We've had a multifamily studio for a long time. We have a variety of different studios that focus on different project types. And over the years, we have evolved out of that or distilled out of that a studio that focuses exclusively on offsite construction. We actually call it the Evolution Design Studio because their focus is all things building technology. That's the studio that geeks out about all new building technologies, things that get us up in the morning and get us excited about that. And that is, offsite construction is at the epicenter of all things building technology as far as we're concerned.
Super cool. And it starts with EV as well, evolution, right?
It certainly does. Yeah.
It all plays in part. Just real quick, how many team members are you today?
So we've got a staff of over 100 folks now, and that's spread across all of those disciplines in those vertical studios. And our headquarters is in Denver, but we've got a great office out in Boise, Idaho, staffed with a group of folks out there, as well as a team down in Austin, Texas. So we're covering a more regional footprint, and we're following our clients all over North America, really. Okay.
And so your territory basically are just clients in North America. Do you get into Canada, Europe, or any of those areas yet?
We've done projects in Canada, have not done anything in Europe, but was just there last fall for vacation, and would love to do something out there. Give us another excuse to be out there. Basically our growth strategy is to grow where our clients need us to grow. So sure. If there's a new project that's coming online in a new state that we're not licensed in, we very quickly get reciprocity through our technical accreditations. At this point, I think we're licensed in 26 states and counting. And almost every month or so, there's something that's stretching us out into a new location.
All right, so let's hop into this here, right? Architects, okay, engineering, all right. So been around forever. MEP design, been around forever. At what point and how did offsite construction become part of the evolution, right? In EVStudios, where were you when it kind of cracked you in the head and you said, all right, we need to look at this?
Yeah, I'd love to say that it was some brilliant business plan that we'd put together at some point many years ago, but I would say offsite construction found us. We'd been working. One of our big clients is in production housing. they ventured into panelization, and they said, hey, can you guys support us with panelized product? How would we put those plans together? What would that look like? We said, sure, that's not a problem at all. We, having the integrated architecture and engineering team makes it really pretty easy and seamless for us from a coordination standpoint. So that was kind of a natural first step. And that step very quickly escalated into a fully volumetric space where, as you know, Dave, in this industry, I mean, it's a relatively intimate industry of folks who know each other, and we like to help each other. And very quickly, the word gets out that, hey, there's a multidisciplinary integrated firm that likes to do offsite construction. That's not easy to find. Groups that like to embrace means and methods, groups that are willing to stretch out and go beyond the traditional scope of work that is defined as traditional architecture and engineering. And so as a result, people were basically coming to us and saying, hey, could you do this? Can you do that? Our first fully volumetric project, not going to lie, we learned a lot of lessons. We learned all those details that we have to think like the plumber, and how's the plumber going to make that connection between those two framing joists and things like that. And that's okay, because that's what we do. We deem that part of the building technology, and it's just grown from there.
Well, I mean, that's it, right? Anybody out there, just if you're watching this and you're new and you want to try modular, whether it's from the design side or the implementation side as a general contractor, it's going to take you 3, 4, 5 projects before you really feel like you got it figured out, and you really start seeing the cost savings, especially if you're trying to learn it on your own. Now, if you work with somebody like Dean or others out there who've been in the industry, man, it can save you a whole lot of headaches and trial and error. Would you agree?
I would definitely agree. The strength of the team in their experience.
Yeah.
The GC, obviously the factory, the design team. Heck, I mean, even bankers that have experience in offsite is going to help you as a developer for sure.
Walk me through the projects that you guys are working on or have worked on, and then let's get into what the process looks like, right? So residential, multifamily, hotels. Tell us a little bit about the different projects you had.
Yeah, you bet. I mean, right now I would say we're very strong doing a lot of projects in multifamily. We've done single family as well, but with the housing crisis being what it is, and just the strong push for densification in our urban environments, and even in some of our rural environments, getting units on the ground is tantamount to a developer's success and a community success. So we've been doing a lot of apartment projects. We have done some hospitality, and like I say, single family. But the one thing that kind of, I don't know if there is an easy button. I'm not sure there is an easy button in this business, but it makes it a little easier in the fact that when a project comes to us, Dave, there are certain portions of that project that have nothing to do with modular construction, right? So if a client goes to a factory because they want to do a modular project, the factory's like, great, let's do it. But the factory doesn't want to be involved in site planning and entitlements and dealing with the local zoning code and the local jurisdiction and any of the site work that has to be done on that. And we can do all that. So we sort of were able to bridge that gap from literally a clean slate and an idea of what we can do on a site, and then support that process, manage all of the design for offsite construction, work as a partner with the manufacturer of choice. Oftentimes I tell folks we're also Switzerland in that space, where we try and match make the best manufacturer for the product. And what's great about our industry today is, every manufacturer kind of has their specialty and their expertise. And so we can really help our clients find those manufacturers that are being a great fit for that project. Right. And then again, we have to live, eat, and breathe the products and the procurement and the SKU numbers within that factory. We can't go off and design with structural strapping that factory doesn't actually have a supply chain for, right? So we sit down with the factory, we understand what their supply chain looks like, what are their SKU numbers, what are their standard operating procedures for wall assemblies, floor assemblies, ceiling cassettes, all of that, so that when we put our plans together, it's designed purpose designed for that factory, for that site, for that jurisdiction, and we're checking off all those boxes.
And so here's a couple questions for you. It sounds one like you're quarterbacking in the project. You're right, because typically how it works, the modular manufacturer works on the modular units, and then their contract is either with the builder, the general contractor, the developer, whomever, right?
Mhm.
What you're saying is not only will you help through the design process with the customer, you'll help match them with the right manufacturer for the product type they're looking to build that can give them what they want and the specifications that they want, because they're not all created equal.
Mhm.
And then you also help manage it through the on-site process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And Dave, the truth is there's just not really a lot of resources out there for owners representation and,
Mhm.
owners client, any of those kind of management roles where there'd be a third party that does that job. And so
Right.
oftentimes our clients are leaning on us to do that. We're happy to do it because at the end of the day, we have to have a seat at every one of those tables along the way anyway, so that we have our finger on the pulse of everything that's going on in that project.
So I want to get started, right, Dean? So here I am. I'm sitting on a bucket load of money and land, and I want to build some apartments, right? And I'm not really thinking about modular or anything like that. I just come to you and I say, Dean, listen, I got $50 million burning a hole in my pocket. I need to build this project. Here's what I want. So many units is what I'm thinking. How do you guys say, hey, chill out, Dave? We got you covered, man. We'll make all this work.
Right. Well, first of all, just write that check, and then we'll get it figured out. No, the truth is, it really is a step-by-step process, right? So, I mean, you've got a site. Every site in the country, in the world, is unique. It has unique topography. It has unique zoning requirements. It has unique access points and stormwater requirements and across the board. So we start with that piece of property, and we do what we call basically a development study. Right, we figure out the yield that we can get on the site. How is it going to be parked? How are we going to meet the requirements? We have the conversations with the client and say, well, if you're willing to go down a road with this jurisdiction where you might have to ask for some things, then we can go this way. If you want to go completely use by right, you're not picking any fights with the community. You're not trying to ask for anything that it's not already going with the land. Then we go that way. There's hundreds of variables involved in that process. And at that point, I often say early on, we really need to make some decisions about construction procurement and means and methods at that time. If we know that it's going to be an offsite fabricated product, that's going to influence our building footprints from that early on in the stage. So we have that conversation. We talk about, would offsite make sense for this project? Will it save money? It will certainly save time. Where is it located? Do we have 5 switchbacks up a steep mountain? Is that going to be too difficult for logistics? And we talk through all of those things, get them out on the table, and even bring in some of the GCs that we work with that have offsite experience, bring in some of the manufacturers that we work with that obviously can speak to that, because a client needs to have that. They need to hear those perspectives. As those conversations are happening, we develop that yield study, and that entire development package is a very high level look at the site, but it's enough to have a pre-application meeting with the jurisdiction, literally have conversations with the fire marshal to find out what kind of NFPA fire sprinkler system we're going to have to put in the thing, and so on and so forth, because each of those steps also inform the overall cost of the project and how it's going to go. After that step, if everything looks good and the pro forma looks good on the developer side, we've got the right unit count, the unit mix, we're able to park it, the jurisdiction is happy, then it's go time. Then it's literally hey, make a deposit, reserve some line time. At some point, the GC can start scheduling when the manufacturer is going to have the modules ready, how their transport's going to work, and then we're nose to the grindstone working out the architectural, the structural, the mechanical, the electrical, the plumbing. And I say it that way very specifically, Dave, because the traditional design model is architecture first, and then you sort of throw it over the wall, and then the engineers have to figure out how to make it happen. That doesn't work in offsite at all, as you know, right? The architect and the structural engineer and the mechanical engineer, we're all sitting in the same room in that evolution studio, and we're collaborating and talking, and there's almost a daily conference with the manufacturer to talk about what kind of screw we can use in a shear panel, because they can only have a certain kind of screw in their gantry, right? So we have to have those conversations, so we're not going off and speccing things that the factory can't supply.
So there's two things that I want to touch on. You're absolutely right. And in offsite construction, just first off, if you think of the MEPs as the last thing you think of in offsite, you're going to start the whole project over again.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's just the bottom line. But I want to walk through one thing here. So if I'm an architect and engineer, designer watching this show, how do you advocate to your client who may not know offsite? Like, how do you start that conversation as an option for them to want to build? Because is it less money? Is it always less money? Could it be less money?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's all these things that they're going to ask. Well, is it going to save me money? Am I going to have more heads on beds faster? Am I going to make money faster? How do you approach that? And then I want to get into, how do you pick the right manufacturer? Because they all have a different name for their widgets.
That's true. Yeah. Great questions, Dave. So in terms of the first one, interestingly enough, these days, I feel like the industry has gotten far enough along now where it comes up in conversation. It's being brought to us. Like, a client is saying, hey, I've heard about this offsite construction. Can you tell us more about it? Of course we can. We have a studio that focuses on that. And step one is in education. I'm literally just explaining how the process works. What is offsite construction? What are the different flavors of offsite construction? Panelization and fully volumetric are different things. They're both offsite. SIPS panels is offsite construction, right? I mean, one could argue even in traditional stick frame design, trusses are offsite construction, windows are offsite construction, et cetera. But we all know what we're talking about when we really bring in offsite in terms of panelization or modular or some hybrid of both. And so it is an education process. The question always comes up about, is this going to save me money? Is it going to cost me more money? And the answer is always, it depends. It depends on how you count what you're counting. If you're counting just straight hard cost, all your costs above the mud sill, and you're doing a project in a labor environment that has, lots of available labor and you can build all year round, I'm not sure that you're going to save money in offsite construction unless you count how much sooner you can start generating revenue. So if it's a hospitality project, or if it's a multifamily for lease product, or even it's a for sale product, you're going to be able to generate revenue on that product faster. Working out the pro forma and things like that is a little bit outside of my lane, but I know that time is money as well. We all know that, and so that's an important element of that factor. Most of our projects today, Dave, ironically happen to be in the mountains areas of the Western region, or in places that are, high density urban infill, incredibly difficult places to build, incredibly high cost per square foot to build. Will offsite save you money there? Every time. Will offsite construction save you money in Telluride, Colorado, where you can build for maybe 3 or 4 months a year before the snow comes back? Without a doubt. There's no labor out there.
Right.
And so the cost to stick frame is, $600 plus a square foot. The cost to do offsite is going to be half that or less. So it's a no-brainer. So it does depend, location, all of those kinds of logistics. So bring me back. You had a second question, Dave, and I've already blitzed it out of my mind.
That's okay. I'm gonna understand what you were saying. You're absolutely right. Like, you look at some of the island builds, we used to do off the coast of Connecticut. Same thing. You don't have labor out there. It's expensive to ship labor in to build and to house and all of those things. So these are some of the quantifiable value adds, and savings that one can add to when doing an offsite construction project. The other question, Dean, was, you work with different modular manufacturers.
Right.
And if I'm an architect or an engineer, or designer, I mean, how do you even know where to start? How do you know what questions to ask? Because you've been doing it a while now, so you know the right way to go here. But if I'm trying to figure this out, not that you want to give away all your secret sauce, but, where does one actually truly start so they don't make a mess of the project?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and triggers all kinds of stories and thoughts and memories.
I bet.
Too. The truth is, we learned who does what really well through experience. The last decade, literally, of doing offsite construction, developing relationships, touring factories. I've toured, all the factories that we do business with and beyond. And it's important that we know that on the design side, because the last thing I want to do is recommend a manufacturer where it's a square peg in a round hole. The manufacturer really doesn't want that either. But if they got vacant line time, they'll probably say yes to things that they're maybe not the best at, right? I mean, we've all seen businesses have to make hard decisions sometimes. And as the economy does these sort of peaks and valleys, you always want a third party's opinion on, is this what they're good at? Is this what they're best at, right? So for us, it truly is, a decade of relationship building, factory tours, and doing business with, at least a dozen or more different offsite construction factories within a 900-mile radius of Denver, because that has been our kind of epicenter.
Right.
As we continue to do projects further east and across the Mississippi and on the eastern seaboard, we're in the same boat as most other design teams, where we're asking other folks, who would you recommend and how would you do that? Going to things like World of Modular Conference, outstanding place to network and meet other folks. We might make that initial meeting with a business development person at a new factory.
Right.
I'm still going to want to tour that factory. I'm going to want to see the work that they've done. I'm going to want to talk to the owners who did projects with that factory, the GCs who worked with that factory. How were they supported? Did they do a good job? And at the peak of that iceberg, Dave, it's really sometimes it's just project type. Who are the factories that are within 500-600 miles of this job site that do 3-story walk-up, or maybe a 5-story type 3 fire protected type product, or steel fabrication, right? Because once you start segmenting factories out in terms of steel versus wood, in terms of hospitality, multifamily, single family, they start to organize themselves pretty cleanly.
Right. Yeah. And you're out in Colorado. You have a lot of options right around you, don't you?
We really do. Yeah. And in fact, part of our strategic plan to have our office in Boise, Idaho is, Idaho is kind of the originator of offsite construction in the West. And we've got a lot of great factories right there outside of our back door.
Right.
And a lot of factories, there's a lot of financial incentive to building new factories and supporting existing factories here in Colorado. We're seeing new factories come online in Salt Lake City. So yeah, it's a great time to be in offsite construction in the West right now, because it's really hit some sort of a tipping point where, again, I think that is due in large part to the fact that it's out there, and there are folks who it's no longer mystical, something that nobody's done. You can go out and you can walk an offsite constructed project just in just about any area now.
Yeah, I know you really can. And it's great to see all of the interest starting to really, truly happening in the offsite space and where it's headed. But I wanted to make note too, because I've been looking at your site a little bit as well. You got a lot of information here on your site, right? Like here, focus these 3 elements, when you're starting. I think, and this is on EVStudio.com, and I'll put that up on the screen right there, right? For those that are watching this. But if you go to EVStudio.com after the show, don't do it while you're watching right now, right? It's an after the show thing. But there's a ton of information. You spend a lot of time really helping people understand what the process is. And basically, as I like to say, this online stuff is, to me, how do you not get eliminated, right? Because everybody's searching for who they want online first. And you're doing a heck of a job because you're using education and resources as a way to show people you're an expert.
No, I appreciate that, Dave. For anybody who's listening to the podcast here who doesn't have the opportunity to go to IBS or World of Modular to hear my playbook presentation, what we do as a firm is we're very open with our information. We openly share a lot of the documents that we use for each design phase. What are the deliverables? So yeah, feel free to go to our website. We freely share that with folks, because again, we're about giving that information. We're about boosting the industry as a whole. There's so much more available work out there than there are architects and engineers and manufacturers and general contractors and set crews to actually keep up with the potential growth. And when you look at some of the statistics that MBI puts out there in terms of what tiny sliver of the overall construction market that offsite construction currently represents today, and that it doubled in the last 5 years. Well, if it doubles again in the next 5 years, we're going to need to double the number of architects and engineers and general contractors and set crews and factories along with it. Otherwise, that will be actually the hindrance to growth in the industry.
Unless we all magically start having 1,000 kids that all want to be contractors, I cannot see how it doesn't keep moving towards offsite construction. Because quite honestly, even to me, playing Fortnite and trying to make money doing it, that's pretty fun too, right?
Yeah,
And I'm not walking a cold sill plate after it snowed 3 feet like it is where you're at right now. The next morning, trying to lay the plates and 4 beams down. So. Listen, let's. I know you do the 5-step process, and you'll talk about it at World of Modular, at your speech there, and you did it at IBS as well. But give us kind of the overview of what one is going to learn when they when they come in and listen to you speak somewhere.
Yeah. So what we try to walk folks through, Dave, is the entire process from what you had asked. When somebody comes with a $50 million and a blank site, all the way to set, stitch, and turnkey, hand the project over. And who does what in which lane, right? Because that's the most important thing. Right now, I think there's a lot of folks that say, yeah, I've heard about offsite. Seems easy, like putting Lego bricks together, right? So maybe we can shortcut that piece. And the reality is we really want to outline that entire flow. What does that workflow look like? Who are the people that you're going to need on your team? Because the hard truth is there are no shortcuts. When you want to do offsite, you have to outthink the entire project, right down to means and methods. And it's a very different way of doing things than the traditional design and then stick frame approach, because there's no such thing as field verify in offsite. We just don't have the luxury of doing that. We don't have the luxury of thinking about mechanicals and electricals in the context of a schematic layout.
Yeah,
that will do nothing but get you into trouble. We don't even like to allow the anybody but the design team to decide exactly where are those joists. You look at a lot of traditional stick frame plans, and the structural plans are just a big rectangle with an arrow that says 11 7/8 TJIs at 16 inches on center, and it doesn't tell you where the joist layout starts or what kinds of openings need to be considered for plumbing stacks and things like that. Well, as we all know, anybody who's done traditional site built construction, there's this evil term called backout framing. And backout framing is a whole nother stage of framing that has to have your framer come back on site and fix all the crap that your plumber and your tinner and all the guys with the Sawzall and a pipe, they cut all the framing out and then they put in the pipes and then they walk away. And so that's a problem. And if you take that same mindset into offsite, it'll be a disaster. Right. And the factory won't have it. Right. The factories,
right,
they'll be the first to call you out as a design team and say, no, you guys don't get it. You don't have the right mindset. So it is a mindset. But those tools and that information that we openly share, Dave, on our website is all about trying to at least illustrate that for folks. And there are going to be some folks that look at that and say, I love this. This is what I was born to do. And there are going to be other people that look at that and say, yep, nope, that's not for me. Think about that in systems thinking. And you know what? We're happy for that. We don't want people who don't have that mindset to jump in and say, hey, here's a quick way to make a buck. Because first of all, they're going to make a disaster of the project. They're going to create a black eye for the industry, which we don't want.
Right.
But instead, we want to, inspire folks who are excited about building technology and systems thinking and means and methods and how to put a great design together and do it in a way that does not have to compromise the integrity and the beauty of the architecture. And that's the most important piece. There's too many people that are like thinking that offsite construction has to be some sort of commodity outcome. It absolutely does not. And that's probably what excites us most as designers.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that in a second. But you brought up something that I have to bring up. My dear friend, late friend, Jerry McCahey, when you mentioned field verify, right? And he uses the reference like this. Do you know, Dean, who the greatest offsite builders in the universe are?
Greatest offsite builders.
Yeah, TikTok, NASA.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So think about it. Jerry always told this story. He goes, listen, Dave, you fly up on the astronaut, on the shuttle, and you got this big, 50 by 50 room you're going to bolt on, and you suit up, you put your helmet on, you put your oxygen on, you climb outside, you clip on so you don't fly away and never be seen again. And you pull out your plans and it says field verify.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. If we can do something on the ground, wood's a little different, right? Because I get it's not, structurally perfectly straight, like steel. But I use that as an example because I think it puts it into context for people out there watch. There is a better way of doing what we're doing. And Field Verify really is just a way to pass the buck on to somebody else in a lot of instances.
Without a doubt. Dave, I love that analogy or that comparison because I've actually used not specifically the idea of Field Verify in NASA, but I've used the example of when the space shuttle goes out to the International Space Station, they have a docking connection that connects all the life support systems, the power, everything that happens. And I think to myself, every time we set a box and I'm staying in the field, how do we not have a docking system where as soon as that box is set, your NEPs are connected, everything automatically connects, so you don't have to do crossover connections. Someday we'll be there, Dave. But
it's coming.
Right now it's coming. But we all have to work together to get from here to there.
Well, one of the things we're going to hop into real quick, and then I want to wrap up with the design side, because that's what architects, engineers, and how do you do a standardized product but still have high design? But first, I just want to ask you, with all the stakeholders, and you touched on it, right? You got the designer, you got the design team, you got the factories, you got the set crew, the general contractors, all the stakeholders in a project from the very start to the very completion where you turn over the keys. How do you manage that life cycle? I mean, is it just a bunch of meetings? Do you guys have some project software that you're using? How do you keep everybody in sync so this thing rock and rolls the way it's supposed to?
Yeah, it is a lot of meetings, Dave. Fortunately, a meeting for meeting's sake doesn't get you very far, but we have a very clear, destination and agenda for every meeting that we have. So we'll have meetings specific that have, the factory and the GC, and the focus of that meeting is, let's talk about parapets. Can we fit them on the transport? If we can a factory build them into the roof structure? If they can, but they don't want to, well then, somebody has to play moderator to that arm wrestle, because you've got two different parties that kind of want to push scope into each other's buckets because they probably already provided a gross maximum price to the client, right? And now they're trying to find ways to shift scope to somebody else. And we play moderator in that role, but every one of those meetings has a critical outcome that goes right into the plans. The plans themselves are really the memorialization of all of those decisions that are made from beginning to end. So we'll talk about everything from how we're going to do electrical metering and water metering and things like that has a huge impact on what kinds of space we need to provide on every floor for equipment, and what we need to provide within units for equipment, and what happens on the outside of the building. And sometimes decisions are made early on that have to be unwound later on, and that's always painful for everybody, but it's still going to be a lot cheaper to fix it before that sucker goes on the line than later, right? And again, drawing in by comparison, how many stick frame projects don't even necessarily know what their electrical switchgear is going to be? The term deferred submittal is right. It's a 4-letter word, really. I think it's a 4-letter word for site built construction, but for offsite, no way. There's no deferred submittal.
Well, that's it. And it's a lot less expensive to fix something on paper or on a CAD design than it is in the field, for sure. Yeah. All right. So, my last question, and then you can touch on whatever you want, but as a designer, architect, a firm, how do you approach the challenges of standardizing designs with offsite construction while still allowing for innovative and creative architectural solutions doing this? Because a lot of people think that you can't get it with modular or panelization. How do you guys do it?
You bet. So that's one of probably the greatest design challenges that we have as a design team. And the way we approach it, Dave, is we don't start from the overall building from the outside in. And that is kind of a traditional design process, right? It's not uncommon if you're a designer to think about, well, what is this going to look like? And then we'll start with those broad strokes and work our way in. We have to turn things inside out when we work with modular. We actually literally start with assemblies because, I don't want to start from the outside, work my way in and realize I can't actually use an assembly that is a standard operating procedure for the manufacturer that we're working with, or oops, we don't have enough space between our modules to be able to pull a strap through or what have you. So we think of it in terms of what we call a kit of parts. And, you could say, okay, well, if I can standardize a kit of parts, then that's going to create high repeatability for the factory. That's what they want, right? They're all about volume. They're all about repeatability. But they don't necessarily care so much about, some of the variables that don't impact what's happening on the line, right? If they're building a plumbing wall, as long as we build the plumbing wall the same,
Yeah.
then we have a lot of other variables that we can play with as long as we don't mess with the plumbing wall. So what we do is we build that kit of parts, all the assemblies, the kit of parts, and we build out from there. And then that gives us a set of tools that we can play with that gives us variables from a design perspective. So, I mean, it's no different than, I can go to the toy store and buy 1,000 block bag of Lego bricks and make just about anything I want. The bricks themselves are very standardized. That's your kit of parts, right? So I don't always have to build a big rectangular building that's 60 by 100, and it always has to have the same units, and the windows always have to be in the same place. My kit of parts is granular enough to give us a lot of flexibility and freedom to do that. And in fact, a great story. One of the things that we did with one of the manufacturers here in Colorado, who we love working with, when they started, before they built their factory, they started, well, what is going to be our product? And so they hired us to build out their plans library, and they're all about a systematized product and building lean manufacturing and all of that, which we absolutely love. The whole idea of reducing waste just resonates tremendously with us. So we went through that and we said, okay, well, let's build a kit of parts that create a unit, and then let's create a set of units that can combine in different ways to create a variety of different ways of going together. Now, this applied to both their single family product as well as their multifamily product. Their single family product, we did the permutations and calculations. It was 4 base modules with 6 add-on modules, and you can combine the base modules and the add-on modules, and you can come up with over 500 different home styles with just those 4 and those 6. And that's what it's all about. It's how can we combine and recombine in interesting ways to create a tremendous amount of design variability.
Yeah, I mean, listen, for the average person out there, the automobile industry does the same thing with a car chassis or a truck chassis. That truck chassis makes probably 30, 40, 50, 100 different vehicles. It's just how you dress it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So yeah, I lied. I'm going to ask you one more question because I'm curious. Do you prefer wood or steel more when it comes to offsite construction? Don't throw yourself under the bus and upset everybody.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, Dave, because it's so context conditioned, right?
It is.
I mean, now the ability to build with a perfect tolerances that steel can give you, as a designer that loves technology, I love that precision. Although the manufacturer that I was just speaking about with the plans library, they were actually building with engineered lumber for the first couple of years. Sure. That actually gave us very similar precision technology. The rubber meets the road, honestly, when it comes to what the application is, right? Do I need a non-combustible wall? Does that help me in some way? Then I'm absolutely going to love steel over wood. But most clients, like we talked about earlier, Dave, are going to ask, well, is this going to save me money? Generally speaking, the wood box is probably going to be a lower price point than the steel box, and that sometimes governs the decision. For right or wrong or otherwise, the budget is the number one program criteria. If the budget doesn't work, nothing else works, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I thought it was a good question, though. All right. I mean, that's it all for me. What do you got? Did I miss anything, Dean? Is there anything you want people to know about you? And, if I'm an architect or an engineer and I just want to learn about this, can I call you guys? Will you talk to me, or am I a competitor?
Absolutely. No, we're very collaborative. As an AE firm, we've always been collaborative. Our engineers work with other architects. Our architects work with other engineers. Our architects work with other architects. Oftentimes, we're architect of record on a project that a design architect who might have been part of a offsite construction comes to the table. They don't know offsite. Our scope of services can run the gamut from just being a modular consultant to help do peer reviews and plans reviews and things like that, educating and that kind of thing. Usually we educate for free, so we don't even charge for that. But we can be anything from a modular consultant to the architect of record to the full AE scope, from site planning, entitlements, rezoning, and all of that, all the way through the design process. So, we could fill it just about any gap. So absolutely, if there are folks out there who, are seeking information, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to be a resource always. We've got a lot of information online. A lot of that information, honestly, Dave, came from questions that we've answered. And we're like, well, this would actually be a pretty good blog post. Let's get it online, get it out there. So anyone else who's searching for that can find it. And, again, it'll advance the industry.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, listen, Dean, I appreciate you taking time to come on the show. I appreciate you educating everybody at all the trade shows. I think that's amazing as well. And I love the fact that anybody can give you a call, even if it's a competitor that wants to learn something, because that's what it's all about. And who knows? You could be an architect out there and you want to do this, and that you could partner with, Dean and EVStudios to make a project come to fruition. I think that's what I'm hearing here.
Absolutely.
Perfect. All right, Dean, unless you got something else to say, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dave. I really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you and your team out in Orlando next week.
I love it. Don't go anywhere, because the rest of you, say thanks to these sponsors as well, because we cannot bring you all these informative conversations like we just had with Dean without them. Everybody out there, have a great day. What an amazing show. Thank you to all of our sponsors for helping us to continue to bring all of these innovative conversations to all of you out there. Please visit them, see what they have to offer you. And as always, subscribe to the YouTube channel and ring that bell. It would mean the world to us. I'm